Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host, along with your co-host, Roxy. Roxy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you on this wonderful Labor Day?
That's what we need to say. Happy Labor Day,
Happy
everybody.
Labor. Yes.
I'm doing fine. And how are you really doing, though? Tell me a little bit about your day.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, I'll tell you something rather distressing.
Oh, my
Not
God.
distressing. Okay, that was an exaggeration. But I was driving. I was out there on 290, and I was leaving a friend's place who is starting a new show here on KPFT. And we were working on it, and I accidentally scraped up against this woman's car.
Oh.
And I had my first kind of real encounter with, because, knock on wood, I've never had any serious accidents before.
Right.
But I scraped up against a new bright yellow Camaro.
Oh, my God.
And so I had my first real grown-up moments of dealing with that. And first, the woman wanted cash for her damages, for her scrape, which, if it was my car, I have scrapes on my car, fine. But for hers, if I had her car, I would also want, something to compensate for that. But she wanted $400 cash.
Oh, no.
I did not, being alone here in Houston and not having parents around, I was like, I need to pay.
So what did he do?
So I showed up this morning. I told her, let's meet at the place we pulled over and talked.
Right.
Like, we'll figure it out from there. Because I talked to an officer friend that I have, and he said, exchange your information, let your insurance handle it.
Take care of it.
And I gave her all of my information, where I lived, my driver's license information, my insurance information, a phone number, policy number, everything, gave it to her. She didn't give me anything. She didn't give me any information for her. She didn't.
Well, if she's going to go to your insurance company, she's going to have to give them. So don't.
So that's what I called my dad, and I called after I left, and I was at one point talking to her, just pleading, give me something so that when my insurance company contacts, it was just so frustrating.
Let me tell you. Listen, don't worry about it.
Okay.
You did just fine. She has the stuff. It went through the insurance company. You're fine. But you know what? I want to give some shout outs to some of our other shows.
Yes.
The Monitor with Mark Bebawi on Mondays at 7 p.m. Great show. It comes on. It's a great show, folks. I learned a lot from that show. And then, of course, there's Think Wing Radio with Michael Honig on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Michael Honig, you know Dr. Honig, but he's great. I love the guy. We do a whole lot on his show as well. But folks, I want to remind you, we had a very good show that got on some people's, last week. I want to tell you that's the kind of shows we want. We want to engage people. We want people to leave their comfort zone. We want people to explore other sides. So that was good. So I want everybody who was on that show to know that I want you guys to keep on calling. But there's something else I want to tell you guys. Remember that we have a Facebook page for this show, Politics Done Right on Facebook. I'd like to have conversations under the topic that we've discussed on these shows so that we can really make progress. It's not just about talking. It's also about changing minds, about keeping together, all that good stuff. But, folks, today's show, should the middle class be sharpening their pitchforks is what I called, or yet is what I call the show. And, today is Labor Day. It is a day to honor those who are the real heroes of the American economy. Unfortunately, American workers are being abused and taken advantage of. As they have become more productive, they have not shared in the spoils. So this can be directly attributed to the decline in unions and a purchased government that affords the plutocrats and capitalists reign over the entire economy. The American worker has become but a commodity. A commoditized worker creates a declining middle class and an impoverished nation. How much longer will the working poor and the middle class acquiesce to this kind of treatment? Should the middle class be sharpening their pitchforks? Folks, please remember that we're listening on hashtag politics done right. Hashtag politics done right if you don't want to call him. But I much prefer if you guys give me a call, because the number is 713-526-5738. That number is 713-526-KPFT. And the one and only Roxy says it this way.
713-JAM KPFT.
So remember that, folks. We want to hear from you. No, listen, this next piece, the blog piece that we're going to read, is going to be fairly long and tough, but I want you to get involved with it.
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, folks, like I said, this one is going to be long, but I beg you to listen to it, because it comes from several points of view. It comes from guys within the plutocracy that realize where we're heading. So here it goes. Should middle class be sharpening their pitchforks is the name of the blog post that I wrote. Here it goes. Liberals and progressives have great ideas. Moreover, these ideas are intrinsically moral. Unfortunately, in that Ivy League thought process where the desire to promote equal access to success is prevalent, marketing these ideas against the immoral forces of selfish is at best a dismal failure. In a capitalist society, those with the most capital are in power. They use that power to control government regulations of the economy, and with that, the economy itself. Wealth and income inequality means that it is a very select few that dictate the lives of us all. Unfortunately, there is a dirty little secret that few talk about. Nick Hauner, a rather observant capitalist plutocrat, spoke about it in his TED Talk a couple of years ago, and I blogged that extensively about it in several different blogs. He said, I can say with confidence, this is Nick speaking, I can say with confidence that rich people don't create jobs, nor do businesses large or small. Jobs are a consequence of a circle of a life-like feedback loop between customers and businesses. And only consumers can set in motion this virtuous cycle of increasing demand and hiring. In that sense, an ordinary consumer is more of a job creator than capitalists like me. That's why when business people take credit for creating jobs, it is a little like squirrels taking credit for creating evolution. It is actually the other way around. Anyone who has ever run a business knows that hiring more people in a course is a course of last resort for capitalists. It's what we do if and only if rising consumer demand requires it. And in this sense, calling yourself job creators isn't just inaccurate, it is disingenuous. That is why our existing policies are so upside down. So says Nick Hanor. Nick Hanor got under the skin of many of his friends again, the plutocrats, the capitalists, these rich guys that are running the economy. He got under the skin of many of his friends again with his new TED Talk a few weeks ago, titled, Beware, Fellow Plutocrats, the pitchforks are coming. In other words, he's warning the rich. He's warning the wealthy. He's warning the capitalists of this country. Be careful, folks. In this one, he said the following. I have a broad perspective on capitalism and business, and I have been rewarded obscenely for that with a life that most of you all can't even imagine. Multiple homes, a yacht, my own plane, etc., etc., etc. So, what do I see in our future today, you ask? I see pitchforks, as in angry mobs with pitchforks. People like us plutocrats are living beyond the dreams of avarice. The other 99% of our fellow citizens are falling farther and farther behind. In 1980, the top 1% of Americans shared about 8% of national income, while the bottom 50% of Americans shared 18%. 30 years later, today the top 1% shares over 20% of national income, while the bottom 50% of Americans share 12 or 13%. If the trend continues, the top 1% will share over 30% of national income in another 30 years, while the bottom 50% of Americans will share just 6%. Think about that, folks. You see, the problem isn't that, and this is still Nick talking, you see, the problem isn't that we have some inequality. The problem is that inequality is at historic highs, and it is getting worse every day. And if wealth, power, and income continue to concentrate at the very tippy top, our society will change from a capitalist democracy to a neo-feudalist rentier society like 18th century France. That was France before the revolution and the mobs with the pitchforks. So, I have a message for my fellow plutocrats and zillionaires, and for anyone who lives in a gated bubble world. Wake up. It cannot last. Because if we do not do something to fix the glaring economic inequities in our society, the pitchforks will come for us. For no free and open society can long sustain this kind of rising economic inequality. It has never happened. There are no examples. You show me a highly unequal society, and I will show you a police state or an uprising. The pitchforks will come for us if we do not address this. It's not a matter of if, it's when. And it will be terrible when they come for everyone, but particularly for people, us, the plutocrats. A few more and then we'll be done. But here it goes. A few months ago, I wrote a piece titled, "Middle Class Must Assert Its Worth to Assure Their Share of Americans' Wealth," imploring the working poor and the middle class to step up to the plate. I said the following: it is time for the middle class to stop accepting crumbs for their labor and innovation. It is time for the middle class to demand, not ask, for programs that recover ill-gotten gains from a system that by design penalizes work and glorifies capital. I then went on to illustrate that it is the sum total of all professions, starting from the teachers to the lawyers, doctors, engineers, custodians, cooks, and all other professions that make this economy run. The capitalists neither have the knowledge nor the wherewithal to produce a product or service. The wealth they believe themselves entitled to is only plausible because of a middle class and working poor who believe the plutocrats and capitalists offer some intrinsic value. They do not. Nick Honor made a most prescient statement in his parallel piece in the July-August issue of Politico magazine. He said the following: "You show me a highly unequal society and I will show you a police state or an uprising. Many of us think we're special because this is America. We think we're immune to the same forces that started the Arab Spring or the French and Russian revolutions for that matter. I know you fellow 0.01%ers tend to dismiss this kind of argument. I have had many of you tell me to my face, I am completely bonkers. And yes, I know there are many of you that are convinced that because you saw a poor kid with an iPhone, that one time inequality is fiction. Here is what I say to you. You're living in a dream world. What everyone wants to believe is that when things reach a tipping point and go from being merely crappy for the masses to dangerous and socially destabilizing, that we are somehow going to know about that shift ahead of time. Any student of history knows that's not what happens. Revolutions like bankruptcies come gradually and then suddenly. One day, somebody, and listen to this good folks, one day, somebody sets himself on fire. Then thousands of people are in the streets. And before you know it, the country is burning. And then there is no time for us to get to the airport and jump on our Gulfstreams 5 and fly to New Zealand. That's the way it always happens, folks. Now have you ever wondered why education is under attack? An educated population will come to the realization that the current system that assigned a higher wealth potential value to the movers of capital, to the plutocrats, is undeserved and ill-advised. They did not and have not earned it. As more of the working poor and middle-class Americans come to that realization, Nick Hanauer's fears will be realized. The pitchforks are being sharpened one finger at a time. America is simmering. It's all covered up now. But it won't be for much longer. Folks, the number is 713-526-5738, 713-526-KPFT, and Roxy says it this way.
713-JAM, KPFT.
And Terry, my dear brother, talk to me.
Hello, good to talk with you again, Egberto. Listening to your commentary, I have to tell you, I don't agree with most of it. I don't agree with the writer's opinion.
Talk to me.
And I'll state it this way. You know, the constant drumbeat toward the codifying of entrepreneurial effort as evil and morally bankrupt needs to stop.
Okay.
I'll give it to you this way. You said something about, and I believe the phrase was, and I tried to memorize it, but it was too long ago, that no entrepreneur has ever, or no business person has ever created anything of substance, and they don't create jobs. What's the essence of your argument?
Yes, and I think I need to qualify that, because I think I am pretty sure that you cannot disagree with what I said in this regards. And here it goes. There are two, in a capitalist society, there are two sets of folk, okay? I know you personally. I know you're an entrepreneur. This discussion has nothing to do with you as an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. I have several businesses. That's not what we're talking about. Capitalism when we talk about the capitalism that I'm talking about the puppeteers that are sitting down in an office that simply move capital. Like I said, knowing yourself, you have invested your worth in much of in a particular business. Likewise, myself and many of the other people that call in here. We are not this particular blog post is not intended to be anti-business. It's not intended to be anti-entrepreneur or any of that sort. It is intended to say that the capital, those that move capital. Let me give you a classic example. This is a very important example that I'm going to give you. Back in the days of I think it was the late 90s, I created a product called a cart system for a website, and it turned out that somebody else owned a copyright on something that shouldn't be copyrightable, and it was nothing but a holding company based by another big company that I won't say the name. And these are just folks that stay in office, hold stocks in companies. Like if you created a company that some mover of capital sees, he's going to buy you out, and then, having no knowledge of a system, be able to capitalize on your ingenuity, and from that create some sort of a intrinsic, ill-deserved success. And that's what I'm talking about. Continue, Terry.
Okay, I won't disagree with that as you prefaced. I will, however, state that I also don't believe that a lot of the Wall Street financiers are entitled to make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Thank you.
Just by being in the right place at the right
exactly.
time.
That's my point.
That is Leslie Alexander, who owns the Rockets. He was a trader in the late 80s or the middle 80s on Wall Street, and because he simply participated in the brokering of many, many multi-billion-dollar deals, he got a 1% fee, and that allowed him to accumulate a fortune of several $100 million.
Exactly. That was unearned. That was monies extracted out of the economy. Now, that 1% didn't go into taxes to reinvest, as Nick Hanauer said. Let me ask you to do something when you get a chance, Terry. I have two specific blog posts that attach to this blog post that I wrote, and it actually gives you the entire Nick Hanauer speech. What has happened with speeches like what Nick has given is they have attempted to narrate that message in the form that you initially stated, an attack on entrepreneurship. which it isn't. This is not an attack on entrepreneurship. This is an attack on those who make their monies from capital. No wherewithal, no investment in mental energy, no production of anything physical for societal value, anything for a service for societal value. When we create things like derivatives, and I'm going to get to Bruce in a little bit, and then I'm going to put you on the hold, Terry, but I want to specify this stuff on derivatives. It's important. We have these capitalists, and I'm using this little term capitalist, that create these financial structures, derivatives and other structures. They claim it is to make the economy better, but what it is the ability to make money on money, not the ability to make money on the creation of something. For those of us in business, those of us who've owned businesses, personally, I have created software that many oil companies have used. I've created software that's been used in many factories. I've created designs for these are things that have moved our economy forward. Likewise, the things that you have done and many others have done. We can quantify the things that we have done within this market economy. I am saying many of these people that now are the multi-billionaires, they don't have much upstairs. The one thing that they do know is that they went to Macomb Business School or some other business school that told them how they can use companies. As an example, what Mitt Romney does, have no interest in companies other than to use it as a form to extract monies out of. They provide no value to the employees. They provide no value to society. They provide no value to help anything move forward. But they're the ones that we have been taught to respect. They're the ones that we have been taught to revere. But they haven't done anything deserving of that. Now, that engineer that fixed that bridge, he does. That nurse, she does. The guy who sweeps the floor here at KPFT, he does. That capitalist hasn't, other than moving a piece of paper. And that's my thing. Terry, you have anything else to add before I jump to Bruce?
No, I was just going to say, though, that the words that you said were that entrepreneurs and the 1% doesn't create jobs. And I was just going to say structurally that's not correct.
Well,
Steve Jobs was a 1%er. I defy you to demonstrate to me the jobs that he didn't create for Apple. So
okay, well, let me tell you. This is important because I think we have to understand Nick Howard's what Nick Howard said specifically. Nick Howard said, and I need to. This is very important because if somebody like you says this, Terry, this is where I think we have to get the communications right. Because we're all on the same team and we have to fight the same issue. But what Nick Howard says is as follows, and I'm trying to scroll to it because I'm glad you brought that up because it's an important statement for those who are thinking we're maligning those that create an environment to create jobs. But what he says is, and this is very important, in a sense, an ordinary consumer is more of, well, let's back up. I need to back up on that one. Jobs are and this is important, folks. Listen to this well. Jobs are a consequence of a circle of lifelike feedback loop between customers and businesses, and only consumers can set in motion this virtuous cycle of increasing demand and hiring. In that sense, an ordinary consumer is more of a job creator than a capitalist. Let me give that. You used Steve Jobs, and that's a very good example. Steve Jobs created the Apple. Steve Jobs created the iPhone and all these bits and pieces. Yes, he created that. And yes, he created jobs for creating that. However, if there was not a consumer capable of purchasing that iPhone, if there was not a consumer that wanted those products, supply side does not work. In other words, if I created a dune bugle, then and nobody buys it, I create no jobs. So therefore, it's Joe Blow consumer who decides to like the product I create, and in purchasing the product I creates a market for Steve Jobs to then have the ability to hire other people. That's my point.
Okay, we'll take it.
Thank you, my brother. Let's go to Bruce in the Woodlands.
Murto.
Hey, how you doing, Bruce?
Just fine. I'm glad you finally got around to this program.
Excellent. Talk to me, my friend.
Okay, I think you're talking details on Nick is and everybody else, but Nick was very close on the circulating system.
Right.
But the big thing is there is capital in this country, and household capital is like $80 trillion.
Right.
The corporate capital is above $30 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
That's over $100 trillion.
Yes.
But our GDP, which is actually what is spent, what is moved around, is only $17 trillion.
Does that tell you something? Tell me what that tells you. Tell our audience what that tells you.
Well, it tells me that, one other fact is that the wages in this country has been about $8 trillion for 10 or more years now. So wages are stagnant. The middle class is stagnant. It's going down.
Right.
The middle class in the United States is no longer the envy of the world.
Right.
Europe and England and others have a stronger middle class than we do here. And the reason is that they are not earning money. There is two different things. There is physical capital,
right,
which is money, and there is human capital. And human capital is what creates things you're talking about with engineers.
It is so important, Bruce. You said something that I wanted to touch on in the blog post. And while I was writing the blog post, I thought about it, but the blog post was already too darn long, so I didn't want to go any further. But you said something important about human capital, right? Remember, there's a balance, right? And this is where today, being Labor Day and not having unions do what unions used to do before, that is, extract the portion of the productivity that should actually come back to the employees, which then gets promoted throughout the economy. Now, when you speak about human capital, that is so important, because what we have been learning to do in America is disregard exactly that. And it's not only the human capital of labor provided, it's the human capital of investment, investing into human beings so that to increase their capital value to the country as a whole, which raises the country as a whole. An educated person is worth much more in America than an uneducated person. And likewise, if we are constantly paying the people less, that capital difference, the difference in capital, is exactly equal to the wealth and income inequality. Because as opposed to that moving to the employee who have really earned it, it goes to the capital stream, which is actually stealing it. Continue, Bruce.
Okay. The part about the wages in this country, the wages are what is driving the country.
Right.
In capitalism, people provide a product, and other people are able to purchase that product,
right,
supply that. As it is constantly going to grow because we have more and more people. We have more and more consumers.
Right.
Okay? So that is going to go up, and that's usually the inflation rate of what's in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're able to let me back off of that a little bit more. When people don't value the human capital,
right,
then they don't have the means to buy the product.
Exactly.
Okay? If they don't have the means to buy the product, there is no reason to produce the product.
Exactly.
Okay? So what we have is another system that values human capital much less, but it takes the government to try to extract monies from the people instead of extracting it from the corporations and where it goes.
Exactly.
So let me just make a general statement that in capitalism, everything generates a profit.
Right.
And that is I'll make another aside here. The universities and business people have been saying that the purpose of a company, the purpose of a business, is to make a profit. They have now left out the other part of it, that it is also to produce a common good of the society.
Well,
they have left that entirely out.
Because that was never a part of capitalism, actually. I don't even think if you were to read Smith, that would ever be, for a common good or anything like that. The only reason for a common good is if you treat people so badly that the society falls apart, and is what I think. But what is interesting
what I'm just referring to was Henry Ford and what Nick was saying, that if you pay your employees enough that they can buy your product, you're going to have a common good that everybody raises up. That ships float.
Right, but the thing about it is, why is it that our business schools are not teaching that? In other words, what Ford did was exceptional, right? In other words, if I pay my employees $5 a day in those days, they can actually afford to buy a Ford if they can afford to buy a Ford. And by the way, John, I see that you fell off the line. Give us a call back. You're on after Bruce. And folks, don't forget, the number is 713-526-5738, and we have several lines open, so please give us a call, 713-526-5738. But Bruce, you're absolutely correct. The thing about it is, when I give these capitalist businessmen a hard time, a lot of times you'll see me call them, they're not very smart. I don't want to particularly demean them, but in effect, they are unworthy of their worth. And you think about it, look at what you said. You are able to explain in detail by thinking through another level of indirection. In other words, on the balance sheet, paying that employee $5 or more, increasing that employee's wages more, initially it hurts the balance sheet. It does. However, what you're doing is you're creating sustainability of your own corporation. In today's world, in today's businesses, they don't worry about that.
Exactly.
They worry about partial sustainability, and after they've extracted worth from the company, they know they can sell that company at some. I know it. Here's the worst part, Bruce. It's not only that they can sell that company, is that they can sell that company after extracting debt. I'm not talking about selling that company for what it's worth. I'm talking about first extracting debt. Put that company into debt. Take the debt out of that as a part of your income, and then let it fly.
Well, Burger King's a good example of that.
Tell the people at Burger King, Surround. Folks, the number is 713-526-5738. This is a great discussion, and if you have any questions, give us a call. This is a very important subject that affects every middle-class person in this country. One of the reasons why we are the middle class, the working poor, is consistently taken advantage of is because a lot of folks in the middle class just throw their hands up in the air, or in general, they think they don't understand what's going on. And by the way, folks, I can tell you something. Most of you are much smarter than those big wheels you see on TV right now. Continue, Bruce.
Okay, I'd like to get back to the overall view, and that is capitalism creates profit.
Right.
And profit always goes to the top.
Right.
Okay, so that is accumulated. Government does not have to assist that profit going to the top, and that's what has been happening here.
Right.
So it's been accumulating there. As Nick said, it's gone from 8% in wealth up to 20%.
Exactly.
Well, it's actually over 25% now.
Exactly.
And there's two different things that you need to look at because taxes are so important on it. But one of them is that you have two different types. You have like income, which is the money flowing around. Mm-hmm. And then you have the wealth, which is the pot that's at the end of the rainbow.
Right.
It's up there, as I said over $100 trillion worth up there. What is actually moving around is the GDP.
Right. Okay? 17 trillion, yeah.
Right. Well, consumers make a big portion of that. They're about 60% of that. But then you have exports and imports, which favor out, and then you've got government spending.
Right.
Now, if you take in a downturn economy that consumers are not buying as much, that means to maintain that money in the economy, that government needs to spend that money.
Yes, that's basic Keynesian economics. Let me put you on hold, Bruce, and let me throw the gauntlet to Teresa. Teresa, talk to me.
Well, I just want to hear more from Bruce, actually. He's just fantastic. Thank you, Bruce, for all you're bringing in. But I'm just going to throw in education. I just met a candidate that's running for comptroller, and he said some really important things. And one is his like opponent says, do I believe in putting money in education since we took $5.4 billion out of our education because our former comptroller said we were going to run into a deficit rather than a surplus, which was wrong. Anyway, I mean, education, we need to put money back into education. That's one way for people to, pull themselves out of poverty, get themselves into middle class or beyond. I mean, look at what the GI Bill did for pulling people out of poverty and getting things stimulated. I mean, that is a real wealth that, we ought to put our energy into. And we have a comptroller, we have a whole party that doesn't believe in supporting public education.
Now, Teresa, this is a fact-based show. We only deal in facts. You did something that is very important, and I think you owe our audience something more, and that is you mentioned, let's tell our audience who these candidates are and what they actually represent. So please feel free to do so.
Well, I had a chance to meet Mike Collier, who's a Democrat running for comptroller, and he is an experienced CPA, and I think he knows what he's talking about. So I think people ought to check him out and check out his opponent who made the crazy statement about education. And he has a couple other crazy ideas about eliminating property taxes, and which would have our
well, he wanted Hager. His name
have our sales tax go up 25%.
I mean, that is past Senator Hager that's running for the comptroller as well, and it's important for our Texans specifically to know these issues. And he's
not a CPA. He doesn't have the financial experience. Not that I'm opposed to business. He's a rice farmer, but I just think people need to check it out. I mean, it takes a little bit of work, but look at what he stands for. Look at his platform. And be prepared to make some decisions come October 20th, which is the first day of early voting.
Right. Well, Teresa, it's important that we say this. I mean, that whenever you're in the political sphere and talking about a comptroller in Texas who is actually elected, in other words, every one of these offices are individually elected. So therefore, this comptroller does not work for the governor. This comptroller does not work for the lieutenant governor, which is likely the most powerful position in this state. They work for the people. And in working for the people, whoever is our comptroller can go directly to the people when these crazies start to do crazy things, as they did with education in the state of Texas. Remember, folks, these people removed over $4.5 billion out of the economy. I mean, out of the education in Texas.
I think it was $5.4 billion.
Okay, well, I must be I'm dyslexic here. Thank you for correcting me. You know how that goes, Teresa. Anyway, $5.4 billion out of education in Texas. But let me give you another number, because whenever they told you that this was because we couldn't afford it in Texas, remember one other number, folks. We give $19 billion every year in Texas as business grants, business giveaways, business refunds, business, what do you call those things that when they get tax breaks. That's what I want to say. Business tax breaks. So remember that, folks. When you go to vote in these elections, you check out your candidates to ensure that the monies are coming to Texas and not being funneled to the corporate structure. So, Teresa, anything else you'd like to add?
I did not hear when I heard Collier speak, he was talking about how Texas was rich, and it wasn't necessarily because of the governor's actions in the last 10 years.
Absolutely not.
I did not hear part of it because I had to go out and take a telephone call. But, so I would like to hear Mr. Collier and maybe his opponent, if you can get him on the air, so we can find out some of their their facts and where they're coming from.
I am going to have Mr. Collier on our show, but I'm also going to try to reach to Hager. I don't think he's going to reply to my email, but I'll try my best to talk to him to get them both in the chair here, sitting across from each other, because that's what we need. Teresa, anything else you have to go before I go to Mike?
I'll let you go. I want to hear more from Bruce and whoever you got.
And Terry, I'm going to go to Mike, and then I'll go back to Terry and Bruce. Okay?
Bye.
Thank you, Teresa. Mike, you're hot. Talk to me, my friend.
Hi, Egberto. How are you doing?
Oh, so far so good. So far so good.
I heard a little bit of your conversation. I just got into the car a few minutes ago, and thought I would mention two things.
Yes,
Three
sir.
things, actually. One, we are just 9 weeks away from Election Day, and as the woman before me pointed out,
Teresa?
only about 6 weeks away from early voting. So there are deadlines for registering. And I would encourage everybody who's listening, and everybody who's listening to encourage everyone they know to start registering now, or also equally important to make sure that their registrations are up to date, because they'll do everything they can to prevent you from voting. As I always like to say, if your vote wasn't important, they wouldn't try so hard to suppress it.
Yes. This is Mike. Tell me some more. Give us some more insights that about what's going on here in the state, so that we can make sure and be exactly what we're supposed to be, informative. Please go for it.
Well, one of the things that I would suggest, something that I can't normally do on the radio, but since I'm a caller, I would suggest, when all else fails, vote a straight ticket Democratic.
Oh, whoa!
You see, I can't
say that
on the air, but I'm a caller, so I can say that.
Okay, Mike.
Not every Democrat is perfect, but statistically, you're much likely to get a better result voting a straight Democratic ticket.
Right. Well, what I like to tell the listeners here as well, Mike, for those who are, because I know that when people are given fact-based information from which they can actually make valid decisions, they vote appropriately. Americans
facts are hard to come by
these
days. The people that pass themselves as journalists and are really just bloggers, and don't understand journalistic reporting and accurate reporting, and stipulating uncertainty.
Well, hold on. I take exception to what you're saying, though. I am a blogger. I don't like to call myself a journalist because I am a bit more slanted. But I am a blogger, and I only blog fact-based information. But I don't want folks to make the mistake and call me a journalist, because I'm an opinionated blogger. But I only blog fact-based information. So don't be so hard on bloggers. There are some darn good bloggers out there.
There are, and I don't mean to paint everybody with the same brush. However, I think it's important that people discern, take time and trouble to discern opinion from fact.
Actually,
opinion is a perfectly legitimate thing. I have no problem with opinion. We all have them, we all should have them, but they should be backed by facts.
I agree wholeheartedly, Mike. Anything else before I go to Dwayne, Mike?
Yes, one more quick thing. I found out something interesting several years ago about myself.
Yes.
When you get down ballot, especially in primaries, it can be really, really tough to decide who to vote for.
Right.
How do you do the research on 50 down ballot people? It's really challenging. I started to fall back on endorsements.
Okay.
I would check out the Chronicle endorsement, and then I would check out the Labor endorsements, and I might check out a couple of others. And you know what I found is more often than not, the endorsement I found I valued the most, and it took me about 2 or 3 years before I figured this out, was the LGBT endorsement.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense because the LGBT community is interested in individual rights.
Right.
They're interested in privacy. They're interested in democratic processes as opposed to bias in legislation.
Right.
So while I certainly would not use them as my only source, I would check out the LGBT caucuses whenever you're looking for an endorsement, and I think that there's actually a lot of value there in consideration.
Excellent. From the mouth of Mike Honig, and
yes.
I gave your show a plug earlier in actually at the beginning of my show, Mike.
Thank you.
At 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, and Roxy wants to say something.
Yes, Roxy.
Thanks for calling in.
Wow, that's succinct. I like succinct because it's something I'm not. You're very welcome.
Okay, well, you have a good one, Mike. Dwayne, you are hot, my dear brother. Come on in.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. It's a great show.
Thank you, Dwayne. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the content and the participants, and I wanted to throw out just a couple of nuggets of knowledge or information about this upcoming election, although we're concentrating, and some are concentrating on the upline, that is the lieutenant governor and the governor. I do expect that Vanderput may stand a better shot at winning the lieutenant governor.
You're a smart political tactician, my friend. I think you're absolutely correct. Go ahead.
Well, she's got some dynamics going for her, including one of the worst candidates that the Republican
Dan Patrick.
That's helping. Yeah. And also, I would want the audience to consider this, though. Of all the listeners, it's likely that 80 or more % of those who are listening who are registered won't vote in this election. We really can't overcome that by you who are listening make the cognitive decision to say, I'm not going to be the 20%. So this is what's at stake. The district attorney, in my opinion, is the most important race on the ballot, the Harris County District Attorney.
Okay.
There will be a debate on October 6th out in Sunnyside. We hope to get more information to your show.
Okay.
To come out and hear those two. I don't submit that vote straight ticket, although I've been known to do so. And what I have concluded is this. If you can find a Republican or a Democrat that fit your needs, that you can identify with, they can identify with your items, that's how you should vote. But if you just want to be just a straight voter, do that. But more important, vote.
Exactly.
People who don't vote talk a lot, and people who do vote tend not to act after they vote. And that's where the missing link is right now.
You know, you said something that is such an important statement, Dwayne, that those who vote tend not to act. Back in 2008, when Barack Obama was elected president of the United States, all the people that elected this man then sat back, not realizing that that was just the beginning of the process. Had all those people who voted remained engaged, think about, there would have never been a 2010 disaster. So that is a very important piece that you just said there, sir.
And I would offer this to all Democrats who are listening, or Republicans or whatever. The Republicans don't want you to hear this, independents and Democrats, but this election can be turned. More Democrats could be elected to the judgeship. The Democrat could take the district attorney, as I just stated, maintain the...
Who's running OG, right?
Yeah, Kim Ogg, whose dad has a legacy here in Houston, and Kim, her own legacy is the former DA, incidentally, and then went on to Crime Stoppers and have been involved in a whole lot. But 10%, only 10 to 15% of the registered voters who didn't vote in 2010, when the president wasn't on the ballot.
Right.
If only 10 more % would go out and vote, it would turn the election.
And in the entire, and not only the election, Dwayne, in the entire state of Texas, because wherever Harris County goes, the gravity of Harris County,
state, right?
What people don't understand is the power of Harris County, Dallas County, Tarrant County, Bexar County, and to some extent,
the valley.
Right, the valley.
You would have to include the valley and a growing monster here.
Right.
Houston may get a consideration in terms of Adrian Garcia been throwing out all kind of feelers and all kind of trial balloons.
Right.
With respect to a 2015 run.
Exactly.
It's my opinion that he would be moving too soon. He has a safe seat over there in sheriff.
Right.
2021 would be a guarantee for him.
Right.
But I don't think he ought to get in this muddied water.
I think what he would be thinking about is if he makes a bad calculation and jumps in too late, it'll already have flipped. Because my contention is where many people think 2016 is a flipping year for Texas, or rather 2020 is a flipping year for Texas, I am actually of the opinion that Texans are waking up. 1 million Texans without health care. If the narrative is placed out there that Texans can be doing much better, not only from a health care point of view, but the business that will come into this state based on accepting the Affordable Care Act's Medicaid expansion. If the narrative is prepared correctly and without the timidity that is endemic within the Democratic Party, if they handled middle class centric issues head on, if they go into the barrios, if they go into the community and work it, I'm not talking about making a telephone call and asking people to come in. Get into the community and work it. Let people know that you care. Let people know that you are going to be working in their best interest. I guarantee you.
You know who will be doing that under the Democratic banner? The Castro brothers in 2016.
No, I met them both at the Democratic DNC in North Carolina. Great guys, and not only that.
Future.
Absolutely.
If you notice, anyone who's done the keynote tend to either be a senator,
yes,
or later to run for president.
Yes.
Now, the last thing I want to ask you, because you sound very astute. Now, this is not a 101 political 101 question. This
yes,
is
sir.
a graduate student question.
Sure.
And that is, should Adrian Garcia choose to run and lose, does he give up his seat as sheriff?
You mean from the laws of Texas, or do you think I'm asking if he should?
No, the law.
The reality is I don't know the law. I don't know the law of whether he can run for that and run and at the same time hold on to the sheriff's position. I really don't know that.
Well, if anyone else can challenge me, as I read the law, he will in fact retain the seat because it is a division.
Okay.
It is a separation, meaning that if he was running for a state,
right,
he would have to give it up. If he was running fed. But because he is at the state and the county level, and he's running for a city position, I believe he.
Well, then, if that is the case, I say he should run earlier. He should run sooner than later. But folks, remember, this show is not only a local show; it's a national show, and there's a lot that Dwayne said that applies nationally, and that is about voting, that is about working the community, and that is about doing all these things we spoke about. Anything else you want to add, Dwayne, before I jump back to Terry and then Bruce?
Well, certainly I appreciate that you're indulging me, but also from the national perspective, almost every point I made, it's going on every plantation across this country.
Right.
So certainly these issues are nationally we're speaking about.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time and your statements, Dwayne. Terry, come on back in. I haven't heard from you in a while, sir.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm listening.
Okay. So let me ask you, because you were, I am so glad that you came forcefully and with your interpretation of what I was saying and pushed back. That is the kind of show that I like to have. Now, in the discussion that has happened with Bruce and Teresa and others, is it clearer where we're coming from specifically as opposed to what you thought I was coming from? Is that clear at all, or?
It's clear. I never thought it was what you were coming from. It was the words that were used in the article that you
read out. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I just wanted to reinforce to everybody listening, because as Drew Weston would say, Drew Weston wrote a book called The Political Brain, a very important book. And the fact is, if we are not articulating a narrative that people can grasp, we have lost. And that is why I took your comments to heart, because whatever it is we're saying about this issue, we have to be able to make that narrative that people in effect understand that, no, what we're doing is looking out for them, looking out for those entrepreneurs, looking out for those people who are really doing something for society.
Well, the best thing that any Democrat can do is to stop the implementation of Republican talking points and enunciate a clear and strategic objective that Democrats can enact.
Right.
The moment we start doing that, then that's when I think things will change dramatically.
I agree with you. Now, before I jump to Bruce, I want you to tell me this. What can you tell me? I think we have to put out there, and I don't believe in saying the income inequality narrative in that fashion, but I do think we have to come out with a manner of showing that our current structure has created an imbalance that has actually hurt the middle class. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Well, yes, I think that's certainly the case, but it's not simply that the political narrative or the 1% is what is solely responsible for the demise of the middle class. The reality is, jobs are changing, demographics are changing, processing methodologies, manufacturing methodologies are changing.
And, Terry...
And those things are just as responsible for the demise of the middle class.
Yes, they are, but there are some issues. Tax laws that allow people to keep monies overseas, tax laws that enable... Remember, whenever I build a product in China, there are additional costs that has to come, right? In other words, the shipping costs, supposedly the importation costs, meaning duties and that sort of thing. Our government has minimized those to make it more profitable then to make these products overseas. So while it is true that the change in technology creates a whole lot of these issues, making a lot of widgets in China for the betterment of just a few and having laws that mitigate that, I think is a 0.1% issue.
And that's a perfect example of what I was talking about. What Democrat have you heard have the discussion that we've had?
None. You're correct. None. But I only have 3 minutes left, and I need to get to Bruce. So thank you, Terry. Give me a quick closer, Terry.
Vote Democrat.
Thank you, my dear brother.
All right.
Okay, Bruce, come on in.
Affluence brings influence.
I love that.
1% does have a lot of influence on our tax system and bringing money too. The other thing is Michael Collier is exactly right on supporting education.
Right.
That is human capital that he is supporting. The problem is it takes 12 years or more for that to come to fruition and here. But the other thing that Mike is saying is that we do have a lot of debt in Texas, and we supposedly have a balanced budget, but we do have a lot of debt because the budget was not balanced, so they borrowed money to balance it. And what is going to happen with the next election if the Republicans are in there? What are they going to do with that surplus of money that we actually do have, like $30 million? Are they going to give it back to the rich or
pay down the debt? They won't. Yeah. They'll give it back to the rich.
Well,
but you said
going to get it. So if you're thinking that it's going to education, I don't think so, and I think it's going to be taken away from people that can benefit from it, like the whole economy. And we're also talking about the expansion of Medicaid.
Right.
They don't want expansion of Medicaid. Who does that benefit? It certainly doesn't benefit the people without insurance.
Exactly.
This election is very, very important, and people need to look at the issues and what it's doing to this country and the state and vote for the way that they feel they are going to benefit.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm at a hard stop now for time. Look, you have been invaluable to the show. Terry has been invaluable to the show. Teresa, Dwayne, and all these callers. I tell you, folks, I have very intelligent callers coming into the show. Folks, this is Politics Done Right. Thank you very much for being with us. One more night. You have a wonderful day. This is Egberto Willies signing off.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.